Hello everyone, welcome to Nursing 5901 Advanced Clinical Practicum. This introduction is going to provide you with information on how to develop your individual learning outcome objectives for your learning contract for this course. You will be using what is called the Revised Bloom's Taxonomy to write your educational outcome objectives. As a future nursing educator, you will often rely on this taxonomy to write learning goals for both yourself in your lifelong learning plan, but also for learning objectives for students as you design learning opportunities, courses, and so you'll get very, very familiar as an educator with the use of this taxonomy. And we're going to go over that in great detail towards the end of this. Bloom's taxonomy does provide a learning hierarchy model that outlines the levels of cognitive learning. So, for example, if you have a novice nursing student who has not been exposed to a certain clinical area before, then you would not be expecting that person to be at the level of evaluation of care. They may be just at the level of basic memorization of a particular type of patient care versus being able to really determine when the care needs to be changed based on changes of condition and things. Just to give a few examples. And we'll go through one specific one that makes this a little clearer in just a minute. As a new learner, you are in a new course and you're going to be in a clinical setting that you have chosen. And so you're going to have to do a specific exercise to assess your learning needs. And this is much like the nursing process where you assess the patient's needs. You're going to assess what are your learning needs, and then what you'll do is you will develop your learning goals and contract based on what you feel that your learning needs are in this clinical setting. Now, as a graduate student, your objectives should typically be at a higher level on the taxonomy just because you're not a brand new nurse. You have had some nursing experience. But if you find that your self-assessment reveals only a novice level as a learner because it's an area that you've had absolutely no exposure to, then you may need a lower level of cognitive verbiage that will be used to describe what it is that your learning outcome is going to be. On the flip side of that, you may be trying to really become an expert in a specific clinical area that you're already familiar with, and if that's your goals, then you're going to write your outcomes for your learning contract to be at a higher level of cognitive learning. So your written learning objectives, I guess in short, should match up with what your self-assessment says. So how do we do a self-assessment? This can be done in a variety of ways. We will be providing you a generic clinical self-assessment, and while that may be a basic thing to get you thinking about this, it's very generic. And if you are going to work in a specific specialty area that you really want to improve upon, let's say it's psychiatric, let's say it's community health, let's say it's the hospital ICU, the best thing really for you to do to get the most detailed self-assessment is to get with the representative that is either going to be your preceptor or whoever the contact is at that facility or that department or unit, and ask them what type of competency or orientation tool that they use when they have new hires that come to that setting. Typically, most places will use what's called a self-assessment, where you go through and rank yourself as I know how to do this. I'm a 5 at this, I'm a 0 at this, I'm somewhere in between. Now, if their tool doesn't have that, it just has like a list of competencies, that doesn't prevent you from using a Likert scale to rank yourself. And that is really what you want to do, so that at the end of doing this, you can really easily look at the document and say, oh, well, these things that I'm a 5 in, I don't need learning outcomes for those. It's the things that I'm 3 and below on that probably would be the better things to write my learning outcomes about. So you will be asked to, whatever tool you decide to use, you will be asked to upload that so that the faculty that's assigned to the course can review that and compare, does your self-assessment match up to what your goals are? So you'll complete the self-assessment, and as I've kind of described, also look and compare that with the 7 learning outcomes for the course in relationship to that. And then start to identify what things match up between the two. What can you identify are priority learning outcome needs for yourself in that setting based on the course outcomes? So then you're going to write your learning objectives. So identify outcomes that are going to assist you in gaining expertise in the weaker areas of knowledge or skill. Meet with your preceptor, discuss the ideas that you're having, talk about what your deficits might be and what course outcomes are. You may want to actually literally show them the individual learning goals development and evaluation form, because they're going to have to be familiar with that to evaluate you on the tail end anyway. So have them look at that with you in your self-assessment, and they may be able to identify specific activities that are unique to that clinical practice setting that will fit right in with helping you gain knowledge in that setting. Then look at all the resources that are provided in As You Learn on subsequent slides of this. Research any new resources online that depict best strategies for writing learning outcomes. Then you'll use the form that we've discussed. Write at least one individual learning outcome objective for each of the 7 course objectives. And you literally will have this as a document file, so you can just type in what you want yours to be and save that as a doc file that can be then put in the Dropbox later. Make sure that each learning objective is really realistic and can be attained during the practicum, and that it's measurable. I did provide you with a little skit here to kind of reiterate for fun a little bit of how you use the verbs that are identified in Bloom's taxonomy. So please feel free to watch that at a later time, just to kind of see how that may help you have a little bit of enjoyment working on this project. This is a copy of Bloom's taxonomy action verbs. I did put you a file of this in the course itself so you can quickly refer to it and print it out. And just to explain how it is, in case no one has had exposure to this before, the levels of cognition are listed on the left side in green. So beginning at the lowest level, to attain knowledge, just to be able to know something, is the simplest level. And so this is where the student recalls or recognizes information. And as you can see from that definition, then you see a whole bunch of categories of sample verbs that can be used to write the verbs in your learning objective. And then this is an example that someone has done to the far right that says the student will define the 6 levels of Bloom's taxonomy of the cognitive domain. So that is how you would write in a learning objective for yourself. Again, here they've used the word define, that is listed over in the first column, the second one down, as the verb for their outcome measure. Now, again, you remember me talking about earlier that you guys are seasoned nurses, even though you may be going into an area where it's a little bit more complex for you. So you may have quite a bit of knowledge already, and you may not find that there's a whole lot of things that you just need to learn or memorize. You might be more at the level of comprehension, or hopefully at the level of application. So as a master's prepared student, you don't want to just learn things, you want to really put them into practice. Or apply them, or be able to choose or determine the best way to do something in a clinical setting. So a lot of your goals for your learning outcomes are going to typically start at the level of application or higher. So, be familiar with all the different sample verbs that you can utilize in that section, and then kind of just think about what else that those might mean for you. And so higher levels are things like analysis. So if you were doing a project where you had to, say, analyze several trends of somebody's cardiac rhythms, and being able to select the proper one to treat properly, then analyzing is at a much higher level of cognition than just to see a cardiac dysrhythmia and say it is AFib. Okay. Same thing is with synthesis, and you will do synthesis in this course quite a bit, and probably with some of your projects, because you're going to have to take a lot of different data together and create a synthesis for your report. You may develop some new project, or maybe it's some new clinical thing that you help work with your preceptor to develop or prepare, and you can see some of these things that deal with creation, design, prepare. Those kind of verbs would be under synthesis, that level of cognitive domain. And finally, the last and highest level of cognitive domain is evaluation. So this is at the level where the student can really appraise, fully assess a situation, or be able to really critique the level of someone else's care that is rendered in that clinical setting. So you just have to kind of really think about some of these things, and your instructor will be able to guide you a little bit more if you have questions. It is perfectly fine for you to submit drafts of that if you would like the faculty member to give you some feedback on it via email before you turn it into the Dropbox. And I'm pretty sure that most of your master's prepared preceptors have had some experience with writing objectives or seeing those in courses, so they should be able to also help guide you a little bit more in that realm. Last of all, here are a couple of more additional writing resources. The guide from Vanderbilt is very good in terms of a lot of different ways, and I would almost bookmark the one for Vanderbilt, because as you get further along in the educational masters, you're going to have to be using these tools a lot more frequently. Please feel free to contact your faculty if you have any questions when you get started with this, and I'm sure they will be glad to assist you.